Hey everyone, welcome to the launch of the new Canyon Spectral On, which is the new e-bike from Canyon. And it's fair to say maybe that it's been a bit of a hole in the Canyon range, and they're a little bit late to the party perhaps, but I would say that this could well have been an advantage to them, because while a lot of the other brands have been sort of clamoring to make sure that they've got an e-bike on the market, Canyon have been able to do their development and their learning about e-bikes almost in private. So rather than having to bring out something and then change it the next year when as new parts come out or new, they find out new things, they've been able to put all of the things that they've learned together into this one bike. So let me talk you through some of the interesting details about this bike. There's a lot going on with it, so I could probably talk for hours about it, but I'm going to try and be quite brief and concise. So first off, might not be immediately noticeable, but the Spectral On uses different size wheels, front and rear. At the front we've got a 29er front wheel, and at the back we've got a 27.5 with a plus tyre. So pretty close in diameter, maybe like a centimetre or so different in diameter, but different ride characteristics and different advantages and disadvantages. So what they've tried to do is kind of optimise the two wheels for the jobs that they do. Now if we talk about the rear wheel, obviously you can climb insane things on an e-bike. You need as much traction as you can possibly get, and in this respect the plus tyre is a brilliant solution. It's got a much bigger footprint. You've got these massive, particularly on this Maxxis Minion DHR, you've got massive paddles, so you've got cushioning, it will deform over rocks, roots, whatever, so you just get insane traction, and that also works in braking as well. But you do have this kind of high volume, low pressure system, which some people don't like up front because you can have a slightly vague steering feel and stuff. So what they've done at the front is they've put the 29er wheel on with a slightly more regular volume tyre to give you a more normal kind of steering feel, a more familiar steering feel, something that, some people get on with plus tyres, some people don't. So they've tried to make something that will cover the biggest audience, basically. So you've got a 2.5 inch Minion DHF up the front, and on this bike is a 160mm travel fork and 150mm travel at the rear. There are 4 models in the range, and the top 2 models have 160mm travel forks, and the 2 lower price models have 150mm travel forks. But all of them use either 35mm or 36mm chassis, depending on the brand. So this is the second from the top in the range. So it gets the 160mm travel fork and uses Fox components, so 36 up front, and SRAM drivetrain, Shimano Motor. Now the Shimano Motor is kind of key because obviously had Canyon come to market with an e-bike a few years ago, they probably would have had to go with Bosch because Shimano it hasn't been on the market that long. But by waiting, it means that they've been able to use the Shimano Motor, and that has really helped with packaging, with geometry, and with weight. It's a lighter system, it's a much more compact system, so they've been able to reduce the chainstay length, and that's really important because it really helps with making the e-bike feel like a mountain bike rather than a motorized bike. So that was one of the key things for Canyon, was making sure that their bike felt like a mountain bike with assistance rather than a motorized bike. Also, you've got the weight saving there as well, which makes a huge difference on the trails. And one of the things that looking at this bike, you might think, well, they haven't got an integrated battery. That's kind of like one of the fashionable things to have on an e-bike at the moment. But the reasons for it are originally it was going to be an integrated, down tube integrated battery, but because that requires a heavier duty down tube and it makes it harder it means you have to have the battery further up the down tube, which means that the center of gravity is higher and more forward. They wanted to use a semi-integrated system, or basically just a non-integrated battery. So on the Spectral the battery is really quite low down on the frame, not far above the motor itself, and it's also very easy to access. You can quite easily take it out if you want to charge it separately from the bike itself. But they still managed to squeeze in a water bottle cage as well, which is one of the kind of problems with some of the piggyback batteries. There's a lot of detailing gone into this bike. So if we look at the cranks, for instance, cranks are 165 millimeters, which is a lot shorter than you get on pretty much anything. I mean, only downhill bikes really have 165 mil cranks, and the reason for that is simple. It gives you more pedal clearance. So you obviously on an e-bike you're pedaling up stuff you would never do on a normal bike, so you need to keep those pedals turning. You don't want to be clipping them on rocks or ruts or whatever. So 165 mil cranks give you that extra clearance, but it means that they can run a pretty low BB as well to help the handling. Another detail is the geometry adjust. So again, this is something to do with pedal clearance. So it's basically like a BB height adjust, although obviously it does affect the head angle and the seat angle. But it gives you 11 to be accurate, 11 millimeters of BB height variation. So if you love a technical climb, you're riding somewhere where it's quite rocky and quite kind of punchy, and maybe you're running flat pedals or whatever, you can raise the BB to give yourself a little bit more clearance. You could even do it at the bottom of a long climb and then change it at the top if you wanted to. And then you've got the more rearward position, which gives you that slacker head angle, lower BB for sort of downhill stability. We've also got a very e-bike specific saddle here, which is pretty cool. It's got a really kicked back tail, which means that you can sort of plant your bum against that tail and drive off it on those kind of steep climbs. Also kind of dropped nose as well, so again you can sit right on that nose if you want to. Wide, well padded, because again you spend a lot of time in the saddle on an e-bike, a lot more than on a normal bike. And the rails are longer as well, so you can shift that saddle forward if you want to get effectively a steeper seat angle. Other details: wide bars on all the Spectral on bikes, because these are big lumps. You need the leverage there for the steering. It gives you so much more extra control. The biggest chassis fork, again, that's another thing which they've ensured across the range. Dual piston brakes across the range, 200mm rotors across the range. Like, all of these things are stuff that they've learned over the years, and things pretty much anyone who's ridden e-bikes a lot in the last few years has learned gradually. And you learn that all these things together as a package really make an impact on how the e-bike rides and how well it performs off-road. Another small detail, but another just shows the kind of lengths they've gone to with the thinking behind the bike, is you've got a narrower front rim, so you've got a 30mm rim up front and then a 35 out back. So again, specific really to the tyre volumes. So with the 2.8 at the back, you've got the wider 35, and then the 2.5 at the front, you've got the 30. And some other nice, neat detailing on the Spectral is the integrated seat clamp you've got. So there's a plastic insert in there that's holding onto the dropper post, which is spreading the load, as you're not going to get any scratches or anything on your seat post. And you've got a really clean, sleek kind of seat tube at the top there. Horse link, kind of hidden horse link, but it's a high horse link on the chainstay there. So it's also got specific rubber mouldings, so it's a really, really quiet bike. Chain guide, specific chain guide, and also like a protective skid plate for the motor housing. Another specific thing to the Spectral is the kinematics. They've gone for an even more progressive kinematics to the Spectral and the Sender and the Torque, which, you know, pretty progressive bikes anyway. But because of the nature of e-bikes, you are going to start to really kind of work the travel once that, with that mass that you've got there, and when you start hitting G-outs and stuff like that, you're really going to blow through that travel unless you've got the support there. And also that means that you've got support to push against when you want to get the bike off the ground, when you want to like bunny hop the bike. And so that progression is really important to the handling and kind of how much you can ride it like a normal mountain bike. So we've been out on it all day today. We've done kind of a big 20-mile ride around the hills of Nice, which is kind of Fabian's Barrel's backyard, and we've ridden downhill tracks, we've ridden up downhill tracks, we've ridden enduro tracks, we've ridden pretty much everything on this bike. We've ridden a ridiculous slick rock climb, which was endless and quite steep, and I've got to say it's one of the best e-bikes that I've ridden. I'm struggling to think of one that is better in terms of feeling like a normal mountain bike. So you get to the top of an amazing descent and you don't feel like you're on an anchor. You don't feel like, oh, I want my normal trail bike to ride this descent because it's too heavy and too unwieldy and cumbersome. This bike, you can absolutely razz down the hills on it, and you can plant it exactly where you want, you can position it where you want, you can be precise on it, you can have fun on it, it's agile, and you know that's saying a lot for what is probably around about a 20 kilo bike. So you really aren't losing out much on the descents. In fact, you're gaining in areas because you have so much stability. The suspension works so well because of that mass, the center of the frame, and the freedom, the lack of unsprung weight compared to this sprung mass in the center of the frame. So the suspension works really well, so much traction, and I was a little bit concerned about maybe the wheel sizes feeling a little bit different, but you don't notice it on the trail. Steering is excellent, the braking traction is really good, and you can really ride this bike aggressively downhill. And then on the climbs, again, it's you know, it's an e-bike. It can climb like amazing stuff that you just kind of blows your mind what you can get up as well. So it suddenly opens up terrain to you that you never thought possible. But the beauty of this bike is you never have to sacrifice anything on the descents, which is really impressive. So first impressions, really good, and can't wait to get on it again and stack it up against some of the other bikes, the new e-bikes that are coming out. So happy days.